Hello, this video today is about cameras. By cameras, I don't mean like a digital SLR or something like that. I'm more talking about the video cameras that you might have situated around your house or maybe outside looking into the garden. And I kind of want to go through some of the things you might want to consider when looking into cameras. I've myself have been through a couple of different types as time has gone by. So hopefully some of the information I can give you today will help you decide on the route you're going to take and the eventual purchase you're going to make. So one of the first things you're going to look at is, are you going to go down the cloud or the local storage option? If you go down the cloud option, there's more than likely a subscription is going to be involved. Not always the case, but there's certainly an increased chance of that. And so the advantage, I think, for something like a cloud solution is actually the storage of that video is accessible from pretty much everywhere. You might see that as being a disadvantage because you don't want other people to be able to view it. But if you're okay with the level of the security the vendor offers, then actually being able to access a footage from yesterday or a week ago, and to be able to have that stored somewhere that you can access remotely on an app, that can be an extremely powerful thing. The second is actually, if you go down the route of using a cloud service, you've got an increased chance of AI or artificial intelligence being applied to it if you find that useful. So one example of that might be recognizing people. So if you have a service that is hosted locally, it's going to record that video onto a hard drive or some other kind of storage means, but actually there's no intelligence that can more than likely be applied to it. If you take something that's sent up to the cloud, there's a limitless amount of power that can then be applied to that, and it could go through and tag all of the times that maybe, for example, a cat walked in, or actually more than likely it could start to recognize the different people coming up to your door. And so with Nest Aware, for example, I'm able to teach it who comes up to my door, and then when somebody walks up to my Nest camera, be that the doorbell or the back door one or the side garden, either one of those three can instantly tell me it's my son, it's the postman, or it's one of the neighbours. So that's quite a powerful thing to have. And so consider that when you're looking at your cloud versus local options. A cloud option for something like video cameras is more likely to be able to connect to other services. So if you have a voice assistant that you want to integrate into that video camera, more than likely if you go for the cloud option, that's going to be entirely more possible. Also, if you want to connect into other services like IFTTT, or you have other hubs that you want to connect into, again, that cloud option just makes it a little bit easier to do that. That said, if that's not something that you need to do and you want it purely to be a recording system, maybe cloud isn't the right route to go. And as I mentioned, certainly there's a cost associated normally with using cloud and having a subscription. So one negative might be you don't want to pay that money to the cloud subscription in order to have all of those features. If that's the case, start looking at local. So local, I mean, the advantage there is that you have unlimited storage as long as you can go and buy the right kind of hard disk to plug into it. A lot of the services that you might use for cloud, there'll be a limit of 30 or 60 days of events. You maybe have a certain amount of minutes that you can keep as recordings or clips, but there's certainly a restriction on the subscription options. So if that's something that you need, then certainly go down the local route. You're going to have, for all intents and purposes, unlimited storage. The second reason, which is probably why people tend to pick it more, is privacy. So if you have concerns about where the data is being stored and how that's being used, then local is the obvious option, where there's a drastically more increased chance that your data is only going to be stored locally and will only be viewed locally. And so if privacy to that extent is important for you, then I would highly recommend local being the route to go. So local storage rather than cloud storage. The next thing you kind of want to consider is actually continuous versus event recording. And so when you look at a vendor and you're thinking about which video camera you're going to start to use, think about those two areas. So event recording is simply going to record the events that occur. So an event would be someone ringing a doorbell, or someone walking in front of the camera, or a sound maybe, right? So it might detect a sound on the camera. And so the advantage kind of there is actually you haven't got like a bunch of video to look through. And usually event triggers or event recording is tied to whether, is tied to the cost that you might pay for that subscription. And so if you know all you want to do is record the events that occur, you don't want the bits in between or the stuff in between, just the events that occur, a doorbell ring or something similar, then maybe what you can do is restrict your set of vendors you're going to look at just to the ones that do event recording. So I had a system that did event recording, and I moved over to continuous. Continuous recording obviously means that it's almost like there's a videotape, and that videotape's going to last for, let's say, 24 hours or 1 week. And if you want to copy something off of there, you have to select it and save it separately. It's a bit of a weird one as to why I went to the continuous recording. I can't give you like a special use case that kind of made me think I need it. It was just the fact that I could. The interesting things it's kind of brought up for me is actually kind of seeing the sun move around my house. Again, it's nothing that's going to change my life, but it's quite an interesting thing to kind of see that. The other time when it's been nice, not useful, but nice to have continuous recording is when we had snow. And actually it was quite interesting to see the snow come down. The snow slowly kind of worked towards the house out of our back garden camera. And then as the snow stopped, you'd see the snow retreat and then kind of come back in. Like I say, has it changed my life? No. Was it interesting to see, and was it worth it for the extra kind of money that I need to pay? Yeah, I find it quite kind of interesting to see over, you know, a 24-hour period how things kind of change around my house. And actually later on I'm going to do another video on the mower. So I've got a robot mower, and as part of that you'll actually see the robot mower in a very short space of time kind of going around my garden. Wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have continuous recording. The other thing you need to consider about continuous recording is actually bandwidth. So event-based recording, it's only going to back up, especially if you're using a cloud option, it's only going to back up those particular events that occur. If you've gone down the route of having a cloud subscription and continuous recording, that's actually gonna kind of start to use up your bandwidth. And depending on the rate at which you're recording, or the bit rate that you're recording, or the quality that you're recording your video, that can actually add up to quite a lot of bandwidth. Not so much of a problem where I am. We have fiber to the house, so I have 300 megabits per second up and down, and no limit on the amount of uploads or downloads, so it's less of an issue for me. But if you know you've got a bad connection, it's one of the things you might want to think about. Could you really cope with continuous recording, especially if you're using a cloud service? The other thing, which I'll go into a bit more detail in a minute, is battery usage. So event-only recording is more than likely going to have a better effect on the battery of the camera if the camera is battery connected rather than mains. So if you find that actually when you put in the camera, it needs to be battery. That's probably going to decide that you are going to go down the event recording route. So yeah, when you're looking at those different options for video cameras, as I said, the thing to think about there is continuous versus event recording, and which one of those two is the kind of most important to you.